My friend Jonathan and I planned a sleepover at his house. We've been best friends since we were little. We went to the same church and we instantly hit it off. We were both serious about our faith and that made us closer. We are both now 16. After my mom dropped me off, I walked up and rang the doorbell. He greeted me and invited me in. We immediately went to his room to play some games. We played Super Smash Bros. For an hour. We had hot dogs for dinner. After that, we went outside to shoot some hoops. We played until it got dark. By then, we decided to go inside. As we were walking back up the driveway, I noticed something in the little alleyway in between his house and the house next door. There was a dumpster in the alleyway. Something was on top of it. Just a cat, I thought. But before I could move on, I realized that the thing I saw was too big to be a cat. It was very dark in the alley, so it was hard to see exactly what it was that I was looking at. Jonathan walked up next to me and asked what I was looking at. I told him I didn't know and pointed to the dumpster in the alley. He squinted in the darkness, searching for the mysterious figure. He found it when he asked,
"What the heck is that?"
The figure hadn't moved from its perch on the dumpster since I spotted it.
"Let's get closer,"
Jonathan said. "What? Are you crazy?" I said.
"Come on, it's fine. It's probably just a stray cat,"
he said. That's what I thought too, I thought to myself. He slowly creeped his way into the alleyway, and I reluctantly followed. As if the thing we were looking at wasn't creepy enough, the dark shadows that enveloped the walls of the houses on either side looked as if any second they would spring from their places and swallow us. We had gotten close enough to the dumpster to where I could see the creature a little more clearly, but not clearly enough to identify any features. It still hadn't moved an inch. It didn't show any notion that it was aware of our presence. We had made it 6 feet from the dumpster when I accidentally scuffed my foot. My friend whipped around and gave me an unpleasant look and put a finger to his lips to silence me. When we turned back to the dumpster, the thing was looking over its shoulder at us, locking its cold eyes on us. Its eyes glowed a bright yellow. It let out a hissing sound that resembled the hiss of a cat and a snake. We immediately turned around and shot right back to the front of the house. My friend ran up the wooden porch steps. Once I made it to the steps, I took a quick glance back into the alleyway. The motion-censored lights of the house next door were on, illuminating the alleyway. Whatever we saw had disappeared. I immediately joined my friend in the house. We were both out of breath. Jonathan was trying to convince his confused parents of what we had just seen. They, of course, didn't believe us, and said it was possibly a cat or a raccoon. We tried to assure them that it wasn't, but they weren't having it. They told us to go straight to bed. We did, but we were so adrenalized from our encounter with whatever that thing was, it was hard to sleep. Jonathan laid in his bed while I spread out my sleeping bag on the floor. For what seemed like an hour, we talked about what we saw in the alleyway. Jonathan said that maybe it really was a raccoon. I nodded in agreement, but deep down I was positive it was no raccoon. We eventually let sleep take us away from reality. I awoke sometime during the night with the need to relieve myself. I stood up from my sleeping bag and groggily made my way to the bedroom door. I stopped at the door, noticing something about the room was different. There was a faint, cool breeze. I glanced over to the window to see it wide open. Neither Jonathan or I opened it before we went to bed. I walked over and closed the window. I then proceeded to make my way out of the bedroom into the bathroom. After I left the bathroom, I started to make my way back to the bedroom. The hallway that leads from Jonathan's room to the bathroom goes past the kitchen. As I'm walking by the kitchen, I notice something that makes me stop. The refrigerator is open, pouring bright light into the kitchen. Someone is crouched behind the refrigerator door and going through the contents. Must be Jonathan getting up for a snack, I thought to myself. I make it back into John's room. I crawl back into my sleeping bag and I'm about to fall back asleep when Jonathan's snoring wakes me up. I'm about to tell him to be quiet when the horrible realization dawns on me. Jonathan's in bed. So who was that out in the kitchen? My heart was in my throat and I was sweating bullets. I reached over to wake up Jonathan. I shook him and he almost immediately woke up. He asked me what was wrong. I told him there was someone in the kitchen. He said it was probably his dad and to go back to sleep. I assured him it wasn't and convinced him to get out of bed and to come with me to look. Reluctantly, he did. We entered the hallway, then turned right into the kitchen. The refrigerator door was wide open and the creature, or whatever it was gone. I slowly walked over to the fridge, expecting someone or something to jump from the darkness and grab me, taking me to the unknown realms from which it came. I closed the fridge door and the room was once again engulfed in darkness. I turned to look at Jonathan, who was watching me. He opened his mouth to say something, but stopped once his eyes landed on something behind me. His eyes shot open, as did his mouth as he began to scream. I turned around to look at what had sent my friend into a fit of terror. My eyes adjusted to the darkness to see the figure crouched down like a frog on the counter next to the sink. It was crouched into an attack pose. I didn't have enough time to turn and run into my friend's room and cower in my sleeping bag before the figure leaped through the air and tackled me to the kitchen floor, like a pro wrestler leaping off of a turnbuckle to splash onto his opponent. I tried to scream, but it had one scaly razor-clawed hand around my neck and another clawed arm raised in the air, preparing to slice me for the kill. The arm came swinging down. I reached up and grabbed the arm, holding it in place. It struggled against me, but I kept my grip. It was incredibly strong for such a skinny creature. My strength was fading fast, its nasty claws getting closer to my face. It was then I saw its face. White eyes that glowed in the dark, 2 slits for a nose in between the eyes and mouth. And the mouth. The hideous, disgusting grin revealed rows of serrated teeth that made me think of stalactites, those pointy things that hang from the ceilings of caves. I said a silent prayer. God, my protector, save me from this ugly freak. Just then I heard what sounded like a gun cocking and then an ear-splitting blast. The creature was sent flying off of me like some invisible force yanked it back. I turned back to see my friend's dad holding a rifle, its barrel smoking like a lit cigar. I turned to see the freak show climb to his feet and leap as quickly as a flea through the kitchen window, disappearing into the night. Neither Jonathan or I got any sleep that night. His parents called the cops, explaining that somebody had broken into the house through his son's bedroom door, then attacked me. One of the officers walked up to my friend and I and asked us what the person looked like. Now obviously we couldn't tell them that we saw a monster, so we just explained that he was wearing a mask. It's been a few years since we saw the thing. We never saw it again. I still sleep over Jonathan's house. We try to forget that night ever happened, but I think about it sometimes. I think about why that thing even existed. I think about the possibility that it's still out there. Or maybe it died from a gunshot wound. But it doesn't matter now. All that matters is that it's gone. To this day, every time I pray, I thank God, despite that the monster was on top of me, my friend's dad didn't miss.